Now add authentication and authorization and all its endpoints like register, login, change password, etc. to a web API easily in under 10 minutes. Let's see how. I will create a web API in .NET 8 as I usually do. I will click on this create a new project button. After that, I will select the ASP.NET Core Web API template and click next. Then I will give a name and a location for my project and click next. And finally, I will select .NET 8 as my framework and keep all the settings as it is and click on the create button. Once the project has been created, I will go ahead and install these new packages. I would definitely need this one over here, which is Microsoft.ASP.NET Core Identity.NET Framework Core. This is common. After that, in this example, I'll be using the in-memory version, so I'll be installing Microsoft.NET Framework Core in-memory. But if you want to do this on the SQL Server, you have to install these two packages, one for SQL Server and the second one to run migrations. So I'll go ahead and install the new packages. I'll come over here to click on dependencies, manage new packages. I'll go to the browse tab and search for the first package I need to install. And once that's done, I will install the in-memory package as well. Now that we have installed some packages, we want to do some plumbing work for any framework code so that we can connect this application to the database together. For that, we will first create the identity DB context. So I will come over here to create a new folder. I will call it data. Inside the data folder, I will create a new DB context. So create a class and I will call this auth-dbcontext.cs. This class that we have created inherits from identity DB context and it comes from the packages that we just installed. So identity DB context, press control dot or control period and use this using statement on the top. The identity DB context also takes a type of user, a T user, and in this case we will write identity user, and this identity user also comes from the package that we installed. Once that is done, we will create a constructor for this class and we'll also use the base constructor. So I will come over here, I can create a constructor myself or I can use the shortcut. So I'll click over here, press control dot or control period and generate the constructor with the options parameter. So by default, I will get the constructor and we are using the base constructor over here and also passing the options. If you're using a SQL Server database, you have to go ahead and add the connection string over here, but I'm using the in-memory one. So I'll skip this part and I will first configure this DB context in the program.cs file. So let's open the program.cs file and let's add this or inject our DB context into the services. On the top over here, insert some new lines and over here, I'll write builder.services.add DB context, and this is of type auth DB context, the one that we created, and you should import your using statement over here. After that, we will use the options such that, and over here we'll say options dot use in-memory database because we are using in-memory one. If you're using a SQL Server, you will say use SQL Server database. This method takes a name for the database, so you can say auth db, and finally use a semicolon to end the statement. After that, we will add the identity services to the container. So we'll use builder.services again, and we'll use the method add authorization. The next thing we want to do is to activate identity. So we'll use builder again. So builder.services.add identity API endpoints of type identity user, and this is the same user that we used inside the DB context. And after that, we'll use the method add entity framework stores, and the store that we are going to attach this authorization is the auth DB context that we created. So these are the three lines of code that we want to add in the services. The final step over here is to map identity routes. So we'll scroll down over here. After the app has been built, we can now come over here and say app.map identity API, and this will do all the magic of type identity user again. So in all, we have these 4 lines of code that goes inside the program.cs, and that is it. Apologies for stopping the video in between, but I want to share that I have created this amazing course on Udemy on ASP.NET Core Web APIs, and this has been the most loved course on this topic, and tens of thousands of students have completed and loved this course. If you want to master ASP.NET Core Web APIs, then this is the course for you. I have a discount coupon and that is in the description of this video. Make sure to check it out. Alright, now let's get back to the video. It's now time to test the solution, and when we run our application and open Swagger, you can see that apart from the weather forecast API, we also get another endpoint which has a lot of methods or action methods inside it. And we get the register API, we get the login API, refresh, confirm email, and every other API that is available to us in identity. And you can see that inside the code, we only still have one controller. So everything is happening behind the scene, and the identity API or the identity packages that we installed is doing all the heavy lifting for us. Let's use this endpoints to register and then log in as a user. And to register first, we'll use the register API and we'll send the email and password in. Now I've given an email and a password, and if I click on execute, you can see that it'll throw me a 400 bad response error. So by default, all the exceptions and the request validation is working for us inbuilt. The error also says that the password is too short, the password requires a non-alphanumeric character, requires one lowercase and requires one uppercase. So let's fix that as well. And this is, by the way, all configurable, and we can configure that in the program.cs file, but that is a video for some other time. And if you want to see that, you can just let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to make one as well. So I've changed the password, and now if I click on execute, this should register a user for us. So we get the 200 success response. So that means our user has been registered. So I'll copy the object so that I can use that in the login response. So I'll click on login, try it out. And the login has a different kind of an object. It requires email, password, two-factor, and recovery code. We haven't configured that, so I'll remove that and I'll just paste the email and password. And we also have two settings over here, which are use cookies and use session cookies. We won't use that at the moment, but let's execute this. And if we look at the response, we get the 200 back, so that's good. We get the token type as bearer, and we get the access token. It expires in that many minutes, and we get the refresh token as well. So if we copy the access token, this is the token that we need to authenticate our client-side applications like Angular application or React application or a simple JavaScript application. So this is the access token that we need, and we can use Postman over here to test this API out, but it would be nice to have the authentication process built in Swagger as well. So let's make some changes to our code. Now to add the a way to add bearer token from Swagger, we have to come back and make some changes. So we'll open the program.cs file, and over here we have the add Swagger gen method over here, and we'll make some changes over to this method. We'll introduce the options, so options such that, and inside the options we will use some different methods. So options Swagger doc, we'll just define the document first. It needs some name, so let's define it as v1, and after that it needs a open API info object, so new open API info object, and over here it needs a title, so title is equal to, let's just say, auth demo, and after that it needs a version, so version is equal to v1. Let's close this. Then we will use the add security definition method. So again, options dot add security definition. Inside the method, the first argument that we want to give is the bearer, and this will be new open API scheme, and in this one we have the in parameter, so where are we sending this, and this will be in the header, so we have to say the parameter location, so we want to send the token in the header. Then we have some description, you can call this anything, please enter a token. Then we have the name of this, and we want to send this in the authorization header, so we will say authorization. The token always goes inside the authorization header. Then we have the type for this, so type is equal to security scheme dot HTTP, and after that we have the bearer format, which will be JWT, so JWT, and finally we have the scheme again, and that will be bearer. So by this way we have added the security definition, and finally we will add the security requirements. So options dot add security requirement method, and inside that we'll open a new object, so new open API security requirement object. Inside that we'll create a new object, and here we will new up the open API security scheme, so open API security scheme like this one, and in here we can say reference is equal to new open API reference, which needs two things. One is the type is reference reference security dot security scheme, and then finally the ID is equal to bearer. Right, all of that is good. After this new object, we want to just new up an array, which we don't want to pass anything, but that is the requirement of that object over here. So this is what we have, and by adding these definitions for the security requirement, security definition, we have configured Swagger. So it's now time to test it out and see if we can add the bearer token from Swagger itself. Now it's time to log in. So let's copy the object again and let's go to our login endpoint, paste the object and execute to get the bearer token. So I'll copy the bearer token, the access token from here, and I'll go to this log sign which says authorize, and it is asking for a value. So paste the access token that you have copied and click on authorize, click on close. And now if we go to any of the other, let's say the weather forecast API, let's click on try it out and execute. You can see that in the request that we are sending to this API, we are now also sending the authorization header, which is the value of bearer space and then the access token that you copied. So this is exactly what we wanted, and we are basically trying to replicate a client that is sending us this access token. And by getting this access token, we want to identify if this client is a known client and have they logged in and are they using the correct resources or not. So to test out our endpoint as well, I will go to the controller and the weather forecast controller. We only have one endpoint, which is over here. So I will use the attribute authorize over here. And by using this authorize attribute, I'm basically trying to restrict the user from calling this method if they are not authenticated and authorized. So to test this out, I will just quickly build my application again. Coming over here, I will now click on authorize, click on try it out, execute. And you can see that I get a 401 response back. That means I am unauthorized. And that's because my application reloaded. I don't have any access token over here, but I still have that copied. So I'll paste it over here, click on authorize. And now if I do execute this request again, let's say the client is doing it for us. If I execute that, I get a 200 response back and all the data I wanted to need. So you can see how easy it was to add authentication and authorization into a new ASP.NET Core Web API or an existing one for that matter. By using the identity packages in .NET 8, it's now become really easy for us to have all the endpoints available to us and also get the JWT token